The dust on Catherine Foster's traveling dress had turned from brown to gray by the time she realized her brother was not coming back. She stood on the wooden sidewalk in front of the Silver Bell Saloon in Hangtown, California, watching the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the rutted main street. Her carpetbag sat at her feet, containing everything she owned in the world. Thomas had told her to wait right here, that he would be back in an hour after he settled some business at the assay office. That had been 6 hours ago, and the September heat of 1872 was finally giving way to evening cool. Catherine was 22 years old, unmarried, and now apparently abandoned in a gold mining town she had never heard of until 3 days ago. Back in St. Louis, Thomas had convinced her to come west with him, promising that California held opportunities for both of them. Their parents had died of fever the previous winter, leaving them with nothing but debts. Thomas said he had a claim waiting, that they would start fresh. She had believed him because he was her only family, her older brother by 5 years, and because she had no other choice. Now she stood alone as miners and merchants passed by, some tipping their hats, others staring with open curiosity. A woman alone was unusual enough. A woman alone with a carpet bag and obvious nowhere to go was a spectacle. "Miss, are you all right?" The voice came from behind her, deep and concerned. Catherine turned to find a man standing a respectful distance away. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. His gray eyes were kind beneath the brim of his worn hat. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy: denim pants, a faded blue shirt, boots that had seen hard use, and a gun belt that hung naturally on his hips. "I'm fine, thank you," Catherine said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. The cowboy glanced at her carpetbag, then at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "You waiting for someone?" Catherine felt her throat tighten. "My brother. He said he would return hours ago." Something flickered across the cowboy's face, a shadow of concern or perhaps recognition. "What does your brother look like, miss?" "Tall, dark hair, brown eyes. His name is Thomas Foster." "Do you know him?" The cowboy removed his hat, holding it in both hands. "I am Isaac Morrison, and I am afraid I might have some information about your brother, Miss Foster." Catherine's heart began to pound. "What information?" "I was at the assay office earlier today. There was a man matching that description who got into an argument with the clerk. Seems he tried to file a claim that was already registered to someone else. There was talk of fraud, of forged documents. The sheriff got involved." "The sheriff?" Catherine felt the world tilting slightly. "Yes, miss." The man left in a hurry, heading east on a fast horse. That was around noon. The words settled over Catherine like a heavy blanket. Thomas had left. He had gotten into trouble and simply left her here. She felt foolish for being surprised. Thomas had always been a schemer, always looking for the easy path to wealth, but she had never imagined he would abandon her completely. "I see," she managed to say, though her vision was blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Isaac Morrison shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable but not leaving. "Do you have anywhere to stay, Miss Foster?" "No." The word came out smaller than she intended. "Family here? Friends?" "No one. I have no one." Isaac was quiet for a long moment, studying his hat brim. When he looked up, his gray eyes were determined. "There is a boarding house run by Mrs. Chen, a respectable widow, but I heard her say yesterday that she is full up with miners. The hotel is not a proper place for a lady alone." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "I have a small ranch about 3 miles outside town. Nothing fancy, but there is a spare room. You could stay there until we figure out what to do. I give you my word that you would be safe and proper." Catherine looked at this stranger, this cowboy offering help when he had no reason to. Her practical side warned against trusting so quickly, but what choice did she have? She had perhaps $3 in her reticule, Not enough for more than a night or two, even if there were rooms available. Why would you help me? She asked directly. Isaac met her gaze without flinching. Because I have a sister back in Texas. If she were stranded somewhere, I would hope someone decent would help her. He put his hat back on. I am not asking you to decide forever, Miss Foster. Just for tonight. Come morning, we can talk to the sheriff, see if there are other options. The sincerity in his voice decided her. All right, Mr. Morrison, I accept your kind offer. Thank you. Call me Isaac, miss. He picked up her carpet bag as easily as if it weighed nothing. My horse and wagon are just down at the livery. It is not much of a ride. As they walked through the darkening streets of Hangtown, Catherine tried to calm her racing thoughts. Everything had changed so quickly. This morning she had still believed in Thomas's promises. Now she was leaving town with a stranger, trusting in the kindness she saw in gray eyes and a quiet manner. The wagon was simple but well maintained, pulled by two sturdy horses. Isaac helped her up onto the seat with careful courtesy, then climbed up beside her. As they rolled out of town, the lights from windows and the saloon faded behind them, replaced by the vast darkness of the California foothills. I should explain about the ranch, Isaac said as the horses found their rhythm. It is not much. I have been building it up for 3 years now. I run cattle, have about 50 head right now. The house is small, 2 bedrooms, but it is solid. I built it myself. You live alone? Yes, miss. I came out from Texas after the war. Worked as a ranch hand for a few years. Saved my money, bought the land. It is not easy work, but it is mine. Catherine heard the pride in his voice. What made you come to California? Needed a fresh start. Too many memories back home, and not all of them good. His hands were steady on the reins. What about you, Miss Foster? What brought you west? So Catherine told him, the words spilling out easier in the darkness. She told him about their parents' death, the debts, Thomas's persuasive promises. She told him about the long train journey, the stagecoach ride, the excitement she had felt at the prospect of a new beginning. And finally, the crushing realization that Thomas had used her somehow, brought her along perhaps as cover for whatever scheme he had planned, and discarded her when it fell apart. I should have known better, she said quietly. Thomas always had grand plans that never quite worked out. But he is my brother. Was my brother, I suppose. Family is complicated, Isaac said. We want to believe in them even when they give us reason not to. They rode in comfortable silence after that. The night was clear, the stars brilliant overhead. The air smelled of dry grass and pine. Despite everything, Catherine felt a small measure of peace. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or perhaps it was the calm presence of the man beside her. The ranch appeared as a darker shape against the dark hills, a house and barn silhouetted against the stars. Isaac guided the horses up to the barn first, helping Catherine down before tending to the animals. She stood in the yard, looking at the simple but well-built structures. This was a place someone cared about, maintained with pride despite limited resources. Let me show you inside, Isaac said, lighting a lantern and leading her to the house. The interior was sparse but clean. The main room held a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, and a small kitchen area. Isaac showed her to one of the 2 bedrooms, setting her carpet bag on a simple bed frame with a straw mattress. I know it is not what you are used to, he began, but Catherine interrupted him. It is wonderful, Isaac. Truly. You have been kinder to me today than my own brother. I cannot thank you enough. In the lantern light, she saw him color slightly. I will make us some supper. Nothing fancy, but you must be hungry. They ate salt pork and beans with hard bread, sitting at the small table. Catherine had eaten in fine restaurants in St. Louis, but this simple meal tasted better than any of those. Perhaps because it was offered with genuine kindness, or perhaps because she had been so afraid just hours ago. What will you do? Isaac asked as they finished eating. Do you have any skills, any trade? I can read and write, keep accounts. I can sew and cook. Back in St. Louis, I helped my mother run our household, and I did some work for a dressmaker. Catherine considered her options, which seemed painfully limited. I suppose I could look for work as a domestic, or perhaps in one of the shops in town. Hangtown is rough, Isaac said carefully. Most of the work for women is either laundry, which breaks your back, or saloon work, which breaks your spirit. Neither is good. I will do what I must. Isaac looked at her across the table, his expression thoughtful. What if you stayed here? Catherine's heart skipped. I cannot impose on your hospitality indefinitely. I do not mean as a guest. I mean as hired help. He spoke quickly, as if the idea was forming as he talked. I could use someone to help with the house, the cooking, maybe the garden I keep meaning to plant. I have been eating my own terrible cooking for 3 years now, and you would have a safe place to stay, proper and respectable. I would pay you wages, of course. Not much, but fair. Isaac, I could not possibly think about it, he said. You do not have to decide tonight, but it would help us both. I promise I would treat you with complete respect. Separate bedrooms, proper behavior, I give you my word on that. Catherine looked into his earnest face and felt something shift in her chest. This man, this stranger, was offering her more than shelter. He was offering her dignity, safety, and a chance to catch her breath. Can I give you my answer tomorrow? Of course, you have had a terrible day. Get some rest. That night, lying in the narrow bed in Isaac Morrison's spare room, Catherine stared at the ceiling and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch. Somewhere outside, an owl called. The house settled with small creaks and sighs. In the other bedroom, she could hear nothing at all. Isaac was apparently a quiet sleeper. She thought about Thomas, wondering where he was now, if he felt any guilt at all for what he had done. She thought about her parents, buried in St. Louis, and how lost she felt without them. But mostly she thought about Isaac Morrison, the cowboy with kind gray eyes who had given her a ride and a place to stay when he had no reason to do so except basic human decency. Catherine had been raised to be cautious, to guard her reputation, to be suspicious of men's motives. But everything in Isaac's manner spoke of genuine goodness. He had kept his distance, been respectful, offered practical help without asking for anything in return. And the way he had spoken of his sister in Texas, the quiet pride in his voice when he talked about his ranch, these things suggested a man of substance and character. As sleep finally claimed her, Catherine realized that for the first time since her parents' death, she felt a small spark of hope. Morning came with golden light streaming through the small window. Catherine woke disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. She dressed quickly in her second dress, a simple gray cotton, and ventured out into the main room. Isaac was already up, making coffee over the fire. He looked up when she entered and gave her a slight smile. Good morning, Miss Foster. I hope you slept well. Please call me Catherine, and yes, thank you. Better than I expected, given everything. They had coffee and biscuits that Isaac admitted were from a batch Mrs. Chin at the would-be boarding house had sold him. She takes pity on us bachelors, he said with self-deprecating humor. Says we would all starve otherwise, and she is probably right. After breakfast, Isaac showed Catherine around the ranch properly. The barn held his 2 wagon horses plus a saddle horse, a pretty bay mare named Clementine. The cattle were grazing in the hills, visible as dark dots in the distance. There was a chicken coop with a dozen hens, a small shed for tools, and behind the house a patch of ground that could be a garden. I keep meaning to fence this properly and plant vegetables, Isaac said, standing in the weedy patch. But between the cattle and maintaining the buildings and everything else, I never get to it. I end up buying vegetables in town at ridiculous prices or doing without. Catherine could see the potential. The soil looked good, and there was a stream nearby for water. It would not take much to make this productive. They walked to the stream, following its cheerful burble through the property. Isaac pointed out the boundaries of his land, 160 acres total, enough for his cattle and room to expand if he could afford more head. I want to build this into something substantial, he told her, his voice full of quiet determination. Not a huge operation, but enough to support a family someday. Enough to be proud of. It is already something to be proud of, Catherine said, meaning it. You built this yourself, from nothing. Isaac looked pleased at her words. They walked back to the house, and Catherine felt her decision solidifying. The ranch was peaceful, beautiful in its simplicity. Isaac was respectful and kind, and she had nowhere else to go. I have thought about your offer, she said as they reached the house. If you truly meant it, I would like to accept. I will keep house, cook, manage the garden if we plant one, in exchange for room, board, and wages. Isaac's face broke into a genuine smile. I meant every word. We should probably discuss terms. Would $5 a week be acceptable? It is not much. It is more than generous, Catherine interrupted. $5 a week was better wages than she could expect for most work available to women. But we should establish some rules for propriety's sake. Agreed, what do you suggest? They spent the next hour working out the details. Catherine would have the smaller bedroom and privacy to dress and bathe. Isaac would never enter her room without permission, nor she his. They would take meals together, but maintain proper decorum at all times. Catherine would have 1 day off per week to go into town if she wished. Either of them could end the arrangement with 1 week's notice if it was not working. Should we put this in writing? Isaac asked. I think your word is good enough, Isaac. You have already proven yourself trustworthy. Something warm flickered in his gray eyes. Thank you, Catherine. That means more than you know. They went into town that afternoon, so Catherine could speak with the sheriff and try to get information about Thomas. Sheriff Daniels was a weathered man in his 50s who listened to her story with sympathy but little hope. Your brother rode out of here fast and did not leave a forwarding address, he said bluntly. He tried to claim the Holbrook mine using documents that were clearly forged. Holbrook is threatening to press charges. If Thomas Foster is smart, he is already halfway to Oregon or Nevada by now. Is there anything I can do? Catherine asked. Nothing, miss. You were not involved in his scheme, so you have nothing to worry about legally. But I would not expect to see him back in these parts. The sheriff's expression softened. I am sorry. I know he is your brother, but he is a con man and a coward. The words hurt, even though Catherine knew they were true. She thanked the sheriff and left with Isaac, who had waited outside the office. I am sorry, Catherine, he said quietly as they walked back to the wagon. Do not be. You tried to warn me yesterday. I suppose I knew deep down what kind of man Thomas really was. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders, but I refused to let his actions define my life. I will make my own way now. That is a good attitude. They bought supplies in town, Catherine carefully selecting items for the house and garden. Isaac watched with interest as she negotiated with the general store owner, getting a better price on seeds and staples. You are good at this, he observed. My mother taught me. She could stretch $1 further than anyone I knew. On the way back to the ranch, Isaac asked about her family, and Catherine found herself talking about happier times. Her mother's laugh, her father's love of books, the comfortable home they had once had. Isaac listened attentively, occasionally asking questions, and Catherine appreciated that he seemed genuinely interested. What about your family? She asked. You mentioned a sister. Abigail, she is 20 now, married to a good man who runs a freight business in San Antonio. I have 2 older brothers as well. Both survived the war. One runs the family farm, the other is a teacher. Isaac's voice held affection and distance both. We write sometimes, but it has been years since I have seen them. Maybe someday I will go back to visit or they will come here. Do you miss them? Sometimes, but I needed to leave, to build something that was mine. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Catherine said. She understood the need for independence, the desire to prove yourself. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Catherine rose early to make breakfast, proper breakfasts with eggs from the chickens and bread she baked herself. Isaac was stunned the first morning when he came in from his early chores to find hot food waiting. "This is what bacon is supposed to taste like," he said in wonder, making Catherine laugh. While Isaac worked with the cattle or maintained the property, Catherine threw herself into making the house a home. She scrubbed floors, aired out the bedrooms, sewed curtains from fabric she found in her carpet bag. She organized the kitchen, started a garden plan, and generally transformed the bachelor cabin into something warmer. Isaac noticed and appreciated every change. "You have done more in 3 days than I managed in 3 years," he told her, looking around the main room, which now held small touches of comfort and beauty. "You were busy keeping everything else running," Catherine said, "but it feels good to make a place nice." They talked during meals, long conversations that ranged from books to politics to dreams for the future. Catherine discovered that Isaac was well read despite his limited formal education. He had taught himself from books, hungry for knowledge. She shared her love of poetry and was surprised when he could quote Wordsworth. "I am not just a simple cowboy," he said with a teasing smile that made Catherine's heart flutter strangely. "I never thought you were simple," she replied. As the days turned into weeks, Catherine found herself increasingly aware of Isaac as a man and not just an employer. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he worked, the warmth of his rare smiles, the gentleness of his hands when he helped her carry something heavy. She told herself it was just gratitude, that she was confused by his kindness. But she knew it was more than that. For his part, Isaac seemed to watch her when he thought she was not looking. She would glance up from her sewing or cooking to find his eyes on her, an expression in them she could not quite read. But he always looked away quickly, maintaining the proper distance they had agreed upon. One evening in late October, they sat by the fire after supper. The first real cold of autumn was in the air, making the warmth welcome. Catherine was mending one of Isaac's shirts, her needle flashing in the firelight. "You do not have to do that," Isaac said from his chair. "That is not part of our agreement." "I do not mind. Besides, you need shirts that are not full of holes. I never knew how much I was just getting by until you came here, Catherine. You have made this house into a real home." Catherine felt warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "It is the first time I have felt like I belonged anywhere since my parents died." Isaac was quiet for a moment, the fire crackling between them. "I am glad you are here. I know the circumstances were awful, but I am glad you stayed." "So am I." Their eyes met across the fire, and something unspoken passed between them. Catherine felt her breath catch. Isaac leaned forward slightly, then seemed to catch himself and sat back. "I should check on the horses," he said abruptly, standing. "Make sure they are settled for the night." After he left, Catherine sat alone with her racing heart and trembling hands. She was falling in love with Isaac Morrison. Perhaps she already had fallen in love with him. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. November brought the first snow to the hills, light dustings that made the landscape beautiful. Catherine stood at the window one morning, watching the white-covered world, and felt Isaac come to stand beside her. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "Yes, it is." But when she glanced at him, he was looking at her, not the snow. The tension between them was growing stronger, an almost physical thing. They were both so careful to maintain propriety, but Catherine could feel the pull between them like gravity. She caught herself looking for excuses to be near him, to brush past him in the small house, to hear his laugh. "In town for supplies one day?" Mrs. Chen pulled Catherine aside in the general store. The older woman was shrewd and kind, one of the few respectable women Catherine had met in Hangtown. "How are things at the Morrison place?" Mrs. Chen asked directly. "Very well, thank you. Isaac is a gentleman and a good employer." "He is a good man," Mrs. Chen agreed. "But I see how you look at each other, and I see how careful you both are." She smiled at Catherine's blush. There is no shame in falling in love, my dear, especially with a good man like Isaac Morrison. But you should talk to each other before the winter makes everything more difficult. Catherine thought about those words all the way back to the ranch. Was it so obvious how she felt? And if Mrs. Chen could see it, could Isaac? That evening, as Catherine was preparing supper, Isaac came in from his work earlier than usual. He stood in the doorway, snow dusting his hat and shoulders, just watching her move around the kitchen. Catherine, we need to talk. Her heart leapt into her throat. About what? About this situation, about us. Catherine set down her spoon with shaking hands. All right. Isaac removed his hat, running his hand through his hair in a nervous gesture she had come to recognize. When you came here, I thought I was just helping someone in need. It seemed like the right thing to do, and I never expected... Expected what? Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. I never expected to fall in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and wonderful. Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. I know I have no right, Isaac continued quickly. You came here as an employee, under my protection. The last thing you need is me taking advantage of the situation. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way. I think about you constantly. I dream about you. I want to be near you every moment, and it is driving me crazy trying to maintain proper distance. Isaac. Catherine took a step toward him. Please let me finish. I know I am not much of a catch. I have a small ranch and a lot of hard work ahead. I cannot offer you fancy things or an easy life, but I would spend every day trying to make you happy. I would work myself to the bone to give you everything you deserve. I would love you with everything I have. Catherine closed the remaining distance between them, looking up into his gray eyes that were full of hope and fear. Isaac Morrison, I have been in love with you for weeks now, probably since the first day, though I did not recognize it then. You are the best man I have ever known. You gave me hope when I had none. You made me feel safe and valued and cared for. I do not want fancy things or an easy life. I want this ranch, this simple house, and you. Just you. Catherine. His voice broke on her name. Kiss me, Isaac. He did, pulling her into his arms with a gentleness that made her heart ache. His lips were soft against hers, the kiss tender and full of all the longing they had both been suppressing. Catherine wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing close, and felt him tremble. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, Catherine. Please say you will marry me. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, absolutely yes. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other as the supper pot boiled over on the stove, and neither of them cared. Outside, snow began to fall again, but inside the small ranch house, everything was warm and perfect. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony in Hangtown, with Mrs. Chen and her grown son as witnesses. Catherine wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Chen helped her make, and Isaac wore his best clothes and looked more handsome than Catherine had ever seen him. The justice of the peace performed the ceremony in the town hall, and when Isaac kissed his bride, there were tears in his eyes. I never thought I would be this happy, he whispered against her hair. Neither did I. They spent their wedding night in the house that was now truly their home. Isaac carried Catherine over the threshold, making her laugh, and set her down gently in the main room. The fire was burning in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Are you nervous? Isaac asked, touching her face gently. A little, but mostly just happy. Catherine smiled up at him. I love you, Isaac. I love you, Catherine. More than I can say. He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and Catherine felt herself melt into him. This was right. This was where she belonged. In Isaac Morrison's arms, in this ranch house in the California foothills, In this life they would build together. That night, Isaac was tender and patient, making sure Catherine felt safe and loved. He whispered words of devotion against her skin, and she responded with her own declarations. When they finally came together, it felt like the natural culmination of everything that had been building between them since that first night when he had offered her a ride and a place to stay. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Isaac's bed, which was now their bed, Catherine's head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Tell me what you are thinking," Isaac said softly, his hand stroking her hair. "I am thinking about Thomas," Catherine admitted, "about how he abandoned me, and it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But if he had not, I never would have met you. I never would have found this happiness. Do you forgive him?" Catherine considered the question seriously. "I do not know if I forgive him, but I am grateful for where his actions led me. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "I am grateful too. Grateful for every circumstance that brought you to me." As Catherine drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about how strange life was. She had come to Hangtown expecting nothing but disappointment, and instead, she had found love and purpose and a home. Sometimes, she thought drowsily, the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. The winter that followed was the happiest time of Catherine's life. The work was hard, the weather sometimes brutal, but she had never felt more content. She and Isaac fell into married life as if they had always been together. They worked side by side during the day, her helping with ranch tasks when needed, him helping with household chores when he could. At night, they lay before the fire and talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds as well as they had learned each other's bodies. "I want to expand the herd next spring," Isaac said one evening in January as snow fell heavily outside. "Maybe double it if we can. With your help managing everything, I can take on more." "We should also think about planting more than just a garden," Catherine suggested. "If we fenced a few acres, we could grow hay for the cattle, maybe wheat to sell." Isaac looked at her with admiration. "You have a good head for this. I never thought about planting crops. Between the two of us, we can make this ranch really prosper." And prosper it did. As winter gave way to spring, Isaac and Catherine worked tirelessly to expand their operation. Isaac bought 20 more head of cattle from a rancher who was moving east. Catherine planted an ambitious garden, plus 2 acres of hay with Isaac's help. They worked from dawn until dusk, exhausted but happy. In May, Catherine realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another month to be sure, then told Isaac one evening at supper. "I am with child," she said simply, watching his face. Isaac's expression went through several changes: shock, joy, wonder, and then a huge smile that lit up his entire face. He jumped up from his chair and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. "A baby! Catherine, we are going to have a baby." "Careful, you will make me dizzy," she laughed, but held him tight. That night they lay in bed discussing names and possibilities. Isaac's hand rested protectively on Catherine's still flat stomach. "I hope he has your smile," Isaac said. "Or she has your eyes," Catherine countered. "I do not care either way, as long as you both stay healthy." Catherine heard the worry underlying his words. Childbirth was dangerous. They both knew that. But she felt strong and healthy. "I will be fine, Isaac. We will be fine." As her pregnancy progressed, Isaac became even more protective. He tried to take over all her work, insisting she rest constantly. Catherine had to fight to maintain her independence. "Isaac Morrison, I am pregnant, not an invalid," she told him firmly when he tried to carry a basket of laundry for her. "I appreciate your concern, but I need to keep moving and working. It is better for the baby." "I just do not want anything to happen to you," he said, his gray eyes worried. Catherine softened, touching his face. "Nothing will happen to me. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. But I need you to trust that I know my own limits. He did trust her, though he remained hovering and concerned. In September, when Catherine's time was near, Isaac rode to town and brought back Mrs. Chen, who had experience in midwifery. This baby has good timing, Mrs. Chen said cheerfully, settling into the spare room. After harvest, but before the real cold sets in. Catherine's labor began on a beautiful September afternoon, almost exactly a year after she had first arrived in Hangtown. The pain started slowly, giving her time to prepare. Mrs. Chin took charge with calm efficiency while Isaac paced outside, occasionally coming to the door to ask anxiously if everything was all right. Go tend your cattle, Isaac Morrison, Mrs. Chin finally shouted. You are making everyone nervous. But Isaac refused to leave, and as the labor intensified and Catherine's pains grew worse, she was glad he stayed. When the contractions were at their strongest, Isaac held her hand and let her grip with crushing force. You can do this, Catherine, he murmured. You are the strongest person I know. After 8 hours of labor, their son was born just as the sun was setting. He came into the world squalling and red-faced and perfect. Mrs. Chen cleaned him quickly and placed him in Catherine's arms. A fine, healthy boy, she declared. Catherine looked down at her son, overwhelmed with love. He had a shock of dark hair, and when he opened his eyes, they were gray like his father's. Isaac sat on the bed beside her, looking at his son with wonder. He is perfect, Isaac breathed. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. They named him Jonathan, after Catherine's father. Little Jonathan Morrison was an easy baby, quick to smile and generally content. Isaac was a devoted father, happy to walk the floor with his son at night when needed, playing with him during the day whenever he could spare a moment. I never knew I could love someone this much, Isaac said one evening, watching his son sleep in the cradle he had built. You and Jonathan are my whole world. And you are ours, Catherine said, leaning against her husband's solid warmth. The next few years passed in a blur of work and love and growing prosperity. The ranch thrived under their joint management. Isaac's herd grew to over 100 head, making them one of the larger ranches in the area. Catherine's gardens and crops brought in additional income. They built an addition onto the house, adding a proper parlor and a second bedroom for Jonathan. Hangtown itself was changing too. The gold rush was long over, but the town had stabilized into a real community. More families settled in the area, and civilization slowly caught up with the frontier. A school was established, and when Jonathan turned 5, he began attending with other children his age. Catherine found herself part of a community of ranch wives, women who worked as hard as their husbands and faced the challenges of frontier life with determination and humor. She especially grew close to Mrs. Chen, who had become a dear friend. You have done well for yourself, Catherine, Mrs. Chen said one day over tea. That first day Isaac brought you to town, looking so lost and alone, I worried about you. But you are strong. You made a good life here. I had help, Catherine said, thinking of all the people who had supported them. And I had Isaac. In the summer when Jonathan was 6, Catherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, making her tired and sick for months. Isaac worried constantly, but Catherine assured him she was fine. Just older this time, she joked. 29 is not 23. Their daughter was born in March after mercifully short labor. She was tiny and perfect, with Catherine's dark hair and Isaac's gray eyes. They named her Caroline, and Jonathan was immediately smitten with his baby sister. I will protect her forever, 6-year-old Jonathan declared solemnly, and Isaac smiled with pride. That is what big brothers do. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. The work was harder, but the joy was greater. Catherine would never forget the sight of Isaac in the evening, sitting by the fire with Caroline in his arms, while Jonathan practiced his letters at the table. This was what happiness looked like, she thought. Not wealth or ease, but love and purpose and family. When Jonathan was 8 and Caroline was 2, a letter arrived from Texas. Isaac's sister Abigail was planning to visit with her husband and 3 children. She wanted to meet the family she had only heard about in letters. The visit was a joyful one. Abigail was delighted with her brother's success and immediately took to Catherine. "I am so glad Isaac found you," she said warmly. "He seems happier than I have ever seen him." "He made me happy first," Catherine replied. The two families spent 2 weeks together, the children playing while the adults talked late into the night. Isaac's brother-in-law was impressed with the ranch and the life Isaac had built. "You have done well for yourself," he said. "This is a good life." After they left, Isaac pulled Catherine close. "Seeing Abigail was wonderful, but it made me realize how complete my life is here. You, our children, this ranch. I do not need anything else." "Neither do I," Catherine agreed, kissing him. The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and growing children and the steady rhythm of ranch life. Jonathan grew into a responsible young man, learning ranching from his father and developing a genuine talent for working with cattle. Caroline was bright and curious, learning to read early and always asking questions. When Jonathan was 15 and Caroline was 9, Catherine realized she was pregnant again. The news was a surprise, as she had assumed at 37 she was past childbearing. Isaac was delighted and terrified in equal measure. "You are not too old, are you?" he worried. "Women have babies at my age all the time. Stop fussing." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Catherine tired more easily than she had before. Jonathan and Caroline helped more around the house, taking on extra responsibilities without complaint. The baby was born on Christmas Eve, a healthy boy they named James. "Our Christmas miracle," Isaac said, holding his youngest son. Jonathan and Caroline doted on their baby brother, and as James grew, they treated him with amused affection. The ranch was prosperous now, with Isaac hiring occasional hands to help with the work. They had achieved the stable, successful life Isaac had dreamed of building. One evening, when Jonathan was 17, Catherine was 29, and Caroline was 11, and James was 2, the family sat together after supper. Jonathan was discussing his plans for expanding the cattle operation. Caroline was reading a book. James was playing at Isaac's feet. Catherine sat doing mending, watching her family with contentment. Isaac caught her eye and smiled, that warm smile she had fallen in love with years ago. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," Catherine said. "How lucky I am to have all of this." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Isaac said. "You made this life, Catherine, through your strength and intelligence and love. I was just smart enough to recognize what a treasure you are. You gave me a ride and a place to stay when I had nothing," Catherine reminded him. "You saved me, Isaac." "No," Isaac said firmly. "We saved each other." As Catherine looked around at her family, at the home they had built, at the life they had created together, she knew Isaac was right. They had saved each other. That day, when her brother had left her stranded, and a cowboy with kind gray eyes had offered help. The ranch continued to grow over the following years. Jonathan took on more and more responsibility, proving himself capable and hardworking. When he turned 20, he married a sweet girl named Mary from a neighboring ranch, and they built a small house on Morrison land. Jonathan and Mary worked alongside Isaac and Catherine, making the ranch a true family operation. Caroline grew into a bright, independent young woman. She talked about becoming a teacher, inspired by the books she loved. Isaac and Catherine encouraged her ambitions, proud of their daughter's intelligence. James was a sunny child, full of energy and mischief. He adored his older siblings and followed his father everywhere, determined to be a rancher like his papa and big brother. One spring evening, when Catherine was 42 and Isaac was 47, they walked together to their favorite spot on the property. It was a small rise that overlooked the ranch, giving a view of the house, barn, pastures, and the hills beyond. They had come here often over the years, whenever they needed to talk or just be together. "Do you remember the first time I brought you here?" Isaac asked, putting his arm around Catherine's shoulders. Of course, it was a few weeks after we were married. You wanted to show me the view. I wanted to show you what we were building together, what our future could look like. Catherine leaned into her husband's solid warmth. It is better than I ever imagined. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their land. Smoke rose from their house's chimney. They could see Jonathan and Mary's house in the distance, light glowing in the windows. The cattle were dark shapes in the pasture, peaceful and well tended. I have been thinking, Isaac said carefully. Jonathan is ready to take over more of the ranch operations. He is capable and has good judgment. Maybe it is time for us to step back a little, let the next generation lead. You want to retire? Catherine was surprised. Isaac had never seemed interested in slowing down. Not retire exactly, but maybe work a little less. Spend more time with you and the children. I am not getting any younger, Catherine. None of us are. I want to enjoy what we have built while we still can. Catherine considered this. The idea of having more time with Isaac, of not working quite so hard, was appealing. What would we do with all that free time? Travel, maybe. Visit Texas and see my family. Take Caroline to San Francisco if she wants to see the city. Spend long mornings in bed. He gave her a mischievous smile that made her laugh. That last one sounds particularly appealing. They began the transition slowly. Jonathan took over the daily management of the cattle operation, while Isaac remained available for advice and major decisions. Catherine taught Mary the household routines and shared her recipes. It felt strange at first, stepping back from work that had defined their lives for so long, but it also felt right, like the natural progression of things. Caroline left for San Francisco at 18 to attend a teaching college, her first time away from home. Catherine cried when they said goodbye at the stage station, and Isaac had to comfort both his wife and daughter. She will be fine, he said, though his own eyes were suspiciously bright. She is strong like her mother. With Caroline away and Jonathan married, the house felt quiet with just Isaac, Catherine, and 9-year-old James. But it was a good quiet, peaceful and content. James thrived with more attention from his parents, and they enjoyed having time to focus on their youngest. Letters came regularly from Caroline, full of her adventures in the city and her studies. She loved teaching college and was doing well. She made friends, attended lectures, explored San Francisco. Her letters were bright and enthusiastic, and Catherine treasured each one. When Caroline was 20, she wrote to say she had met someone, a man named Robert who was studying to be a lawyer. Isaac and Catherine exchanged glances over the letter. She is too young to be thinking about marriage, Isaac said, though without real conviction. She is the same age I was when I came to Hangtown, Catherine reminded him gently. The same age I was when I fell in love with you. That was different. How was it different? Isaac could not really explain how, so he just grumbled and accepted that his daughter was grown and making her own choices. When Robert came to visit the ranch 6 months later, Isaac interrogated him thoroughly, but eventually admitted the young man seemed decent and genuinely in love with Caroline. Caroline and Robert married in San Francisco when she was 21, in a small ceremony that the family traveled to attend. It was James's first trip to a real city, and his wide-eyed wonder at the tall buildings and busy streets made everyone laugh. Is everywhere like this? 12-year-old James asked, looking overwhelmed. No, son, Isaac said, putting his hand on his son's shoulder. Most places are quieter and saner. This is just San Francisco being San Francisco. After the wedding, Isaac and Catherine stayed in the city for a week, enjoying the novelty of hotel rooms and restaurants. It was strange and exciting to be away from the ranch, to have no responsibilities, but enjoying themselves. We should do this more often, Catherine said as they walked through the streets hand in hand. Travel, you mean? Yes. See more of the world while we still can. So they began to travel, short trips at first. They went to Sacramento and explored the state capital. They visited the coast and saw the ocean for the first time, standing on the beach in awe of the endless water. They traveled south to Los Angeles, north to Oregon. Each trip was an adventure, a chance to experience new things together. But they always came home to the ranch, to the land they had built their life on. That never changed. The ranch was their heart, their foundation. James grew into a strapping young man, tall like his father with his mother's dark hair. He had no interest in anything but ranching, happy to work alongside his father and brother. When he was 16, Isaac officially made him a partner in the operation, recognizing his contributions. Morrison Ranch is a family business, Isaac said at the dinner celebrating James's partnership. Built by family, run by family, and it will stay in the family long after I am gone. Do not talk about being gone, Catherine chided, though she knew they were both getting older. Isaac was 53, she was 48. They were no longer young, though they were both still healthy and active. I am just being practical, Isaac said. I want to make sure everything is in order, that you and the children are taken care of. He worked with a lawyer to draw up proper papers, ensuring the ranch would be split equally between Jonathan, Caroline, and James. Catherine would have a lifetime interest in the property and income from it. Everything was legal and documented. Satisfied now? Catherine asked after the papers were signed. Satisfied, Isaac agreed, pulling her into his arms. I just want to know you will be all right, whatever happens. We will have many more years together, Catherine said firmly. Do not start acting old on me, Isaac Morrison. And they did have more years. Good years filled with love and family. Caroline and Robert had 2 daughters, and Caroline taught at a school in San Francisco. Jonathan and Mary had 4 children, 3 boys and a girl, who ran wild around the ranch with their Uncle James. The Morrison family gathered for holidays and celebrations, filling the ranch house with noise and laughter. When Isaac was 60 and Catherine was 55, they celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary with a big party. All their children and grandchildren came to the ranch. Friends from town attended. Mrs. Chen, now ancient but still sharp, was a guest of honor. 31 years, Mrs. Chen said, hugging Catherine. I remember when Isaac first brought you to town, so lost and alone. Look what you built together. We were lucky, Catherine said. Not lucky. Smart and hardworking and in love. That is what builds a lasting marriage. As Catherine looked around at the celebration, at her husband laughing with their sons, at her grandchildren playing, at the home they had created, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Her life had not been easy, but it had been good. It had been full of love and purpose and family. That night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Isaac and Catherine sat together on the porch in the dark. The stars were brilliant overhead, just as they had been that first night when Isaac had brought her to the ranch. What are you thinking about? Isaac asked, taking her hand. That first night when you offered me a place to stay. I was so scared and lost. I had no idea my life was about to change completely. I was scared too, Isaac admitted. I saw you standing there in town, and I knew I had to help, but I never imagined you would become my whole world. Catherine squeezed his hand. I love you, Isaac Morrison. I have loved you for more than 30 years, and I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Catherine. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. They sat together in the darkness, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of meaning and love. The ranch was quiet around them, peaceful and prosperous. Their children were grown and happy. Their grandchildren were healthy and thriving. They had achieved everything they had worked for and more. Years continued to pass gently. Isaac and Catherine grew older, but remained active, still helping with the ranch, though leaving most of the work to younger generations. They traveled when they felt like it, spent time with their grandchildren, and enjoyed the peace they had earned. James married at 25 to a rancher's daughter named Elizabeth, and they built a house on Morrison land like Jonathan had. Elizabeth fit into the family easily, and she and Catherine became close. Soon, James and Elizabeth had children of their own, adding more grandchildren to the growing Morrison clan. When Catherine was 60, she developed a persistent cough that worried everyone. Isaac insisted she see the doctor in Sacramento, traveling with her and staying by her side through the examination. The doctor said her lungs were weakened, probably from years of smoke from cooking fires and the dust of ranch life. You need to rest more, the doctor said sternly. Take better care of yourself. Catherine obeyed, cutting back on her activities, though it frustrated her. Isaac was attentive and protective, making sure she did not overwork. With Elizabeth and Mary both helping with household tasks, Catherine found herself with more leisure time than she had ever had in her life. I feel useless, she complained to Isaac one afternoon. You are not useless. You are resting and getting stronger. Isaac sat beside her on the porch, holding her hand. You have spent 40 years working yourself to the bone for this family. Let us take care of you for a change. So Catherine let herself be taken care of. Something that did not come naturally, but that she learned to accept. Her health improved with rest, and though she never regained her full strength, she stabilized. The cough faded to an occasional thing rather than a constant presence. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire Morrison family gathered again for a massive celebration. There were now 18 grandchildren ranging from babies to young adults, plus various in-laws and friends. The ranch house overflowed with people and noise and joy. Isaac stood to give a toast, raising his glass as the crowd quieted. 40 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever met. Catherine came into my life when I did not even know I needed her, and she transformed everything. She took a bachelor's cabin and made it a home. She took a struggling ranch and helped me build prosperity. She gave me children and grandchildren, love and partnership, and a life beyond anything I could have imagined. Catherine, you are my heart, my partner, my love. Here is to 40 more years. Everyone cheered and clinked glasses, though Catherine was crying too hard to drink. Isaac came to her and pulled her to her feet, kissing her in front of their entire family. I love you, he whispered against her hair. I love you too, my cowboy. The celebration went late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. Catherine watched it all with deep satisfaction. This was her legacy, not just the ranch or the prosperity, but this family. These people who loved and supported each other, who worked together and celebrated together. She and Isaac had created something that would last beyond them, something that mattered. As Isaac and Catherine entered their 60s, they slowed down further, but never stopped. They walked the property together daily when weather allowed, keeping up with the rhythms of the ranch they knew so well. They spent long evenings reading together by the fire or playing with whichever grandchildren were visiting. They talked about everything and nothing, the easy conversation of people who had spent a lifetime together. When Isaac was 68 and Catherine was 63, Isaac developed trouble with his heart. It came on suddenly, chest pains that left him weak and breathless. Catherine was terrified, and the doctor was grave. His heart is failing, the doctor said bluntly. At his age, there's not much to be done. Rest, avoid strain, and hope for the best. Isaac took the news with calm acceptance that made Catherine want to scream. We all die sometime, he said, when they were alone. Not yet, Catherine said fiercely. I am not ready to lose you yet, Isaac Morrison. Then I will do my best to stick around, he promised, taking her hand. Isaac followed doctor's orders, resting and taking things easy. The heart problem stabilized, but did not go away. He had good days and bad days. On the good days, he would walk with Catherine and play with his great-grandchildren, who were starting to arrive now. On the bad days, he rested in bed while Catherine sat beside him, reading aloud or just keeping him company. I do not regret anything, Isaac told her one evening as they lay in bed together. Every choice I made, every moment I spent with you, it was all worth it. I have had a good life, Catherine. A really good life. We are not done yet, Catherine insisted. They had 3 more years together, 3 years of quiet companionship and deep love. Isaac got to meet 5 great grandchildren, hold them in his arms, and tell them stories about the ranch's history. He saw Jonathan's oldest son take a leadership role in the operation, ensuring the ranch would continue for another generation. He celebrated his 70th birthday surrounded by family. Isaac Morrison died peacefully in his sleep on a warm June night, Catherine beside him as she had been for 43 years. He simply did not wake up, slipping away quietly as the sun rose over the ranch he had built. Catherine was devastated but not surprised. She had known it was coming, had felt him pulling away for weeks. Still, the loss was immense. Half of herself was gone, her partner and companion in love. The funeral was large, attended by family and friends, and people from all over the region who had known and respected Isaac Morrison. He was buried on the ranch, on the rise where he and Catherine had so often stood to survey their land. The simple gravestone read, Isaac Morrison, 1802-1872, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. He built something that lasted. After the funeral, Catherine stood at Isaac's grave while the family gathered at the house. She was not ready to join them yet, needed a moment alone with her husband. You kept your promise, she said softly, touching the headstone. You gave me a good life, Isaac. You loved me well. Thank you for everything, my darling. Thank you for stopping that day in Hangtown to help a stranded stranger. Thank you for offering her a ride and a place to stay. Thank you for loving me. I will love you until we meet again. Catherine lived for 8 more years after Isaac's death, years filled with family and quiet contentment. She was the matriarch of the Morrison clan now, respected and loved by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She told stories about Isaac, keeping his memory alive for the youngest generations who had not known him well. She stayed in the ranch house, though Jonathan and James both offered to have her move in with them. This was her home, the place she had shared with Isaac. She would not leave it. Catherine spent her days reading, sewing, and watching the ranch operate. She offered advice when asked, but otherwise let the younger generations run things. She walked daily to Isaac's grave, talking to him about family news and ranch business. She found comfort in the routine, in the connection she still felt to her husband. When Catherine was 71, she developed pneumonia during a cold winter. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she did not recover. She died surrounded by her children, slipping away peacefully after a week of declining health. They buried her next to Isaac on the rise overlooking the ranch. Her gravestone read, Catherine Foster Morrison, 1825-1896, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she made a house a home. The Morrison Ranch continued to prosper for generations, run by Jonathan's descendants, and then James's, and then their children's children. The original house was preserved and expanded, becoming the heart of a sprawling family compound. Isaac and Catherine's graves on the rise became a place of pilgrimage for family members, a reminder of the love and work that had founded their legacy. The story of Catherine and Isaac was passed down through the family, how a woman stranded by her brother had been rescued by a cowboy with kind gray eyes, how they had fallen in love and built something lasting together, how their partnership had created not just a successful ranch, but a family bound by love and respect. Over 100 years later, Morrison descendants still told the story of their great-great-grandparents, the cowboy and the stranded woman who had built an empire of love on a small California ranch. They told how Isaac had given Catherine a ride and a place to stay, and how she had given him a home and a heart. They told of 43 years of marriage, of trials overcome and joys celebrated, of a love that had lasted beyond death itself. Because that was the real legacy of Catherine and Isaac Morrison, not the land or the prosperity, but the love. The kind of love that saves and strengthens, that builds and endures, that creates something beautiful out of the hardest circumstances. The kind of love that starts with one person seeing another in need and choosing to help, and grows into a lifetime of partnership and devotion. That love echoed through generations, inspiring descendants to seek the same depth of connection, the same partnership, the same commitment. And in that way, Catherine and Isaac lived on, not just in memory, but in the love their family continued to share. Their story had a perfect ending because their love had no ending at all. It continued, generation after generation, a testament to what two people could create when they chose each other and built a life together with dedication and devotion and unshakable love.